I'd like to welcome you to the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake regular board meeting. My name is Steve Schmaltz and I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's August 22nd and it's 6:30. So with that, welcome any visitors we have. We have some visitors here in our office, which is nice to have you. So welcome and thank you for coming. Let's move on then to setting the meeting agenda. We have, are there any changes or adjustments to the meeting agenda? Okay, hearing none, then I'll ask for a motion to accept the agenda as printers.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we've got a meeting agenda and I forgot to ask for a roll call vote at the beginning. So we should probably do that for our records. Tori, could you please roll call the managers for attendance?
Manager Lowe,
Here,
Manager Anderson,
Here,
Manager Baki,
I am here.
Manager Taves,
Here,
President Schmaltz.
Here. So we have everyone, all the managers are at the meeting, which is great. Thank you. So then moving on to the consent agenda, this evening we have three.
Do we also have to vote on the agenda now that we've done roll call?
Yes.
Again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sending us the agenda, just have a motion on that too. That there is.
we did that earlier though, but it was out of order, you're saying?
we didn't poll everybody. We need to do that part.
Okay,
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
aye,
President Schmaltz.
aye. So the agenda is then set. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have three board meetings minutes to approve. One is from July 11th, 2024. Special board meeting minutes from July 24th, 2024. And the regular board meeting minutes from July 25th, 2024. Are there any changes or corrections or additions to the consent agenda minutes? Okay, hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Manager Love. Tori, would you do the roll call vote?
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
aye,
President Schmaltz.
Aye, so the consent agenda has been approved and accepted. Moving on to item 4, the public hearing. Tonight we'll have a presentation on the 2025 budget and levy. With public comment available. So Mike, do you want to cover that?
Yes, Mr. President, managers, so with the opening of the hearing, we do have a pre-recorded presentation that Emily Hines has done. So there'll be, the budget discussion will be in 2 parts. First will just be the hearing portion and we'll take public comment. And then later on in the budget or in the meeting agenda under 9C is the 2025 budget. And then there the board will take up further discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let me know if you're on the other end of this, if you can hear the audio. Welcome to the public hearing. No. Give me a second.
I'll just note that there should have been an update on the slides. There inadvertently, we had placed that there's a draft levy due by the middle of September. That's actually a final levy for changes in the statute. And then the board would be considered a final levy unless there was some modification at the end of the year, which there'll be a notification in November, and then another open meeting or opportunity for open discussion in December.
Only going down though. We
Correct.
cannot increase the levy past
After
September
15th,
15th.
correct. Thank you, Manager Harrison.
All right, let's try this again.
Welcome to the public hearing for the Comfort Lake Forest Lake
Can you
Watershed
hear it?
District's 2025 budget and levy.
Low.
Oh, you can't hear it? Okay. Which one?
You might have to turn your volume up if it's
It's
slow.
not coming through the owl here in the office. But
Yeah.
Welcome to the public hearing for the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District's 2025 budget and levy. My name is Emily Hines. I'm the planning coordinator for the district, and I will be presenting an overview of the draft budget and highlighting some notable projects and programs we have planned for 2025. The Board of Managers will accept public comments on the budget and levy at its August 22nd regular meeting immediately following this presentation. Here's a summary of the draft expense budget and estimated revenues. These figures are subject to change following receipt of public comments and further discussion among the Board of Managers. As of now, the draft budget is approximately $3 million and includes implementation of a variety of water quality programs, including regulatory, aquatic invasive species prevention and management, cost share programs, and more. In the following slides, I will present an overview of ongoing planning efforts and projects for the year 2025. In 2025, the district will be making payments on 3 Clean Water Partnership loans from previous years, what we're calling loans A, B, and C, and receiving income from another Clean Water Partnership loan, Loan D. Estimated revenues for the year 2025 include an ad valorem tax levy on properties within the district, grants, partner contributions, interest earnings, and the Clean Water Partnership loan.
Let me get,
The draft budget currently includes a levy
I'll print.
increase of 5% compared to 2024, which involves utilizing approximately $240,000 from the district's reserve fund in order to balance the budget. In comparison, the district's net tax capacity is
Oh, no.
estimated to increase by 9.8%. The Board of Managers will discuss potential levy increases and consider the associated tax impacts. This slide shows the timeline for finalizing the budget and levy. The district must certify its draft levy by September 15th. The district will offer another public comment opportunity at its December 19th regular board meeting, where the board will consider additional comments on the budget and levy. By December 31st, the district must certify its final levy. The district may alter its expense budget up or down, but it can only decrease the levy compared to what was certified on September 15th. Here are some highlights of planned 2025 programs and projects. The district is in the process of multiple planning efforts in order to establish the scientifically based foundation and strategy for future watershed protection work, with a particular focus on climate resiliency. The ongoing floodplain vulnerability assessment will help the district prioritize flood mitigation strategies such as stormwater volume control projects. The district obtained a local climate action grant from the Pollution Control Agency to help fund this work. Once a list of projects is identified, there are numerous grant programs that the district can apply to in order to fund project design and construction. Dovetailing with this climate resiliency work, the district is also about to embark on a strategic planning initiative in order to confirm priorities and establish a strategy for implementation moving forward. The district obtained a performance review and assistance program grant from the Board of Water and Soil Resources for this effort.
yeah,
The district has secured grants for the following 3 projects. One major project in 2025 will be the second phase of the Forest Lake alum treatment, which manages internal phosphorus loading in the lake. The alum dosing is split into 2 phases in order to maximize efficacy. The first phase occurred in 2023, and the district has been taking water and lake bottom sediment samples in 2024 in order to determine the proper dosing for the second dose in 2025. The July Avenue Feedlot project will manage nutrient loading and prevent erosion on a feedlot and crop field upstream of School Lake. This project will improve water quality in School Lake, which has benefits for Little Comfort Lake, and the Sunrise River, which are downstream. The district is partnering with the City of Forest Lake to implement a shoreline restoration project at the City Park at North Shore Circle. This natural shoreline buffer restoration will prevent erosion, provide wildlife habitat, and serve as a key demonstration site to show area residents how beautiful and beneficial a natural shoreline buffer can be. The district has also secured grants for additional shoreline restoration projects and public outreach through its cost share program. We will host a Green Corps member, which is a temporary full-time position funded through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's grant program. We are partnering with the Great River Greening to manage invasive species and improve native vegetation on the North Shore Trail Nature Area located northwest of the Third Lake public boat launch on Forest Lake. The district has also been awarded grants to purchase land south of Bone Lake. The proposed land acquisition presents multiple opportunities for wildlife habitat improvement, water quality benefits, and floodplain storage. The district may amend its budget to incorporate this expenditure and associated revenues once we are further along in the acquisition negotiation process. The district has several additional grants in progress, which are critical to funding additional work. One major project initiative is the Heath Iron Enhanced Sand Filter, which would provide a critical water quality improvement for Little Comfort Lake. Additionally, the district is proposing an intensive project targeting and project development initiative for the Sunrise River headwaters, including Little Comfort Lake and Comfort Lake. While the district has implemented multiple projects in the Comfort Lake Management District over the years, including the Target Store retrofits, Bixby Park project, and Highway 61 wetland enhancement, there is still work that needs to be done in order to achieve long-term water quality goals for these two lakes, which are located at the bottom of the watershed flow network. The district is seeking clean water funds for these first two projects. Additionally, the district has a pending grant application to the Pollinator Pathways Program. Funding would enhance our cost share program and allow for more Minnesota native plantings to promote pollinator habitat corridors. The district will continue to cast a wide grant-seeking net with an emphasis on flood mitigation, climate resiliency, and greenway corridors. The district's watershed protection and climate resiliency work is multifaceted and involves several program areas and projects. The district has made great strides in improving the water quality of local lakes over the last several years. We celebrated the nutrient impairment delisting of Bone Lake earlier this year, and we expect to be able to delist several more lakes over the coming years. This watershed protection and climate resiliency work will protect the public investment in water quality improvements, as well as provide multiple additional benefits. On a final note, buy-in from local residents is critical to watershed protection. Shoreline erosion and loss of shoreland is a big problem in Minnesota. Natural shorelines improve a lake's resiliency to changing climate conditions, fluctuating water levels, and increasingly severe rain events. The district offers technical and financial assistance to lakeshore homeowners looking to restore and protect their shorelines. Please visit www.clflwd.org for more information.
Mike, why don't we put the first expense revenue summary back up for it? So I'll just talk through that. So they have the numbers on them.
Just a second.
The two bar charts that we had up first.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Close that out. There you go. Slide number 2 will be.
Lost my signature. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. That one?
Yes, that's it. That's not the corrected one though, is it? But that's okay.
That's the one that was in the.
Yeah, right.
presentation.
Okay, so basically, just to go over, since you had a hard time hearing here. On the left side, the blue table, you show what our total budget is, which is $3,050,000, $496, and that's comprised of administration, which is a little over $500,000. Programs, which are 1.4 million, and projects, which are engineering capital intensive projects that we do for water quality improvements, et cetera, at just under 700,000. So that's what we're spending our money on. The financing revenue shows 2.8 million. That comprises a levy of 1.805, which is a 5% increase in the levy. Internet, or interest and other revenue of 128,500. Earned grants, which is 428,000, which are grants from the state level, which reduces local taxpayer dollars. And then we have gone in a loan program the last several years to expedite our completing projects to get these water quality projects improved and working for the public faster. So we have another loan this year of 450,000. That means we're short about $230,000 and for this year. So what we had planned to do was take that out of our reserve, which is over $1 million. And that's kind of our backup fund. So that's what we plan to do. Normally, we will underspend the budget, and so we'll usually not spend all the budget, so that reserve will be picked up again. Or the other thing we can do is we right now have 2 employees that are open positions. So as we go through the rest of the year, till we fill those at the end of the year, we'll build up money there that won't be spent. And that'll more than cover the reserve shortage we've got right now by the end of the year, so we should be fine. So that's kind of a thumbnails comment of the budget. Any questions from anyone?
I just want to make a comment.
Sure, Manager.
That we really have to budget for 18 months. And so the reserve is not just sitting there gathering dust. A lot of it is to pay for the overhead and salaries and the lights and all that kind of stuff for the first 6 months of the year, because our levies come in. This past year, they came in July. So they used to be late May or early June, someplace in that area, but now they're coming later into July. And so we have to make sure that we have overhead to cover that. So we really budget for 18 months and as far as the revenue. So it's a carryover. I just want to make certain that people understand.
Right, that's a good point. And then the second check comes in probably end of December
That's correct.
or January.
Yes,
So we
that's
get
correct.
2 big checks from the levy a year.
Yeah.
So we have to cover the shortfall in between. So are there any other questions? Do we have any audience that have questions? On the Zoom call?
Not yet.
Okay, no questions then. I think then if that's the case, we can move on to the second item or the. Move over to the public open forum. And the public open forum, I declare it open right now. This is for anyone that wants to speak to the board about any topic. For a few minutes. So is there anybody in the audience, either here in the office or on the Zoom call, that would like to address the board?
I would.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Russell Lynn Mansmith.
And where do you live, Russell?
I'm right on the county line on the road to the gun club, Elmcrest Avenue. I have a Christmas tree farm there. And I'm about 1/4 of a mile from the freeway. But you can't get there by going. And
Over by Cup.
Right.
yeah, I can smell the bakery. But we have a tree farm there. I have been treated with courtesy whenever I visited this office. But have grave concerns. With the budget of many billion, I would hope that he would help me with the problem I have had for 6 weeks, for the last 6 weeks. Water on my property has gone up close to 2 feet. I thought maybe a culvert out on the freeway had been moved. But I thought maybe a beaver had gotten into the ditch that comes into my property that the water goes out. Just a short while. In 1958, I was hired to be an assistant to a civil engineer with the United States Geological Survey, making topographical maps. We ran levels in Minnesota and Michigan. Later, I assisted him in southwest Louisiana, working along the Sabine River with a plane table analysis. Example, 20 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico, we got a reading of 4 feet above sea level. Rain fell in Dallas that weekend. On Monday, when we went to the spot where we had been working, it was under 20 feet of water. We have lived in our home for 58 years, more than any of you are old. So we've been there a long time. I understand the wet and dry cycles. Summer of 22 and 23 were very dry. And the winter was very dry, not much moisture. This summer is pretty much normal. The water in and around my tree farm is a foot higher than it's ever been in 58 years. Many oak trees, maple trees, cedar trees, and white pine have either died or are dying. I fully understand the basic principle of water flow. Some things has disturbed me, has disturbed the natural flow of the water off of my property. What could it be? I talked to the project coordinator, Blaine. He said that the main mission of this group was directed towards Forest Lake and Comfort Lake only. That is not what I remember was on my bill when I got my $114 bill. There was 2 parcels. Somewhere on that bill it said surface water management. For years, my property has been the drain field for many of the neighbors. It's just the way it sits. The neighbors drain into it. Then I quickly send $114 to the Forest Lake, Comfort Lake Watershed District. I thought maybe the work on the freeway might have disturbed something, as far as a culvert or something there. And had been set higher. The neighbor across the street who lives in Columbus Township. And I took the bull by the horns yesterday. And we walked out to the ditch. And went through the woods that had not been managed for at least 80 years. During that walk, I tripped and fell flat on my face. We found a fallen tree was the main problem. We got permission from that landowner to try to fix the problem. He said he didn't want us to use any heavy equipment. So, I think I skipped a page. Yeah. No, that was it. The last few years, a school was built close to that same dip. They have a holding pond. A large rain would fill them up. The overflow would go into that same ditch, and if that wasn't working, my tree farm would again be the drain field for that. Comfort Forest Lake Water District told me they could not do anything for me. This ditch ends in the lower area close to the creek that flows out of Forest Lake. That ditch comes out, goes under the freeway, and it gets into that area where I think you call it the Sunrise River starts right there. I don't know if that's part of the Forest Lake. Most likely it isn't. But I understand, I've done a lot of mapping, so I goes on to Comfort Lake, which is your stated mission. I'm 83 years old. I walked that tangled woods with 2 hip replacements, 1 knee replacement and 1 ankle replacement. I told my neighbor that I would help him fix that problem. He said that if I went back into that mess again, he would charge me $50 an hour, then he would do it alone. Today, he did it. Your name, Comfort Forest Lake Watershed District sounds uncompromising, but it is very limited to the lakes. Yet generates millions of dollars without much concern for us not on those lakes or you service the lakes. Your service, you survive by our tax dollars. I now have lost hundreds of dead and dying trees. And next year, I will send you a check to support your huge budget. I'm too old to replant my trees. They're beautiful, white cedar, white pine, planted 40 to 50 years ago. I guess that's my sermon for the day.
So exactly what would you want us to do?
You don't, I found out you don't wanna do anything, so.
Mr.
You
President,
got the problem fixed, correct?
Mr.
No.
President.
No, they wouldn't even let us use,
Must have seen.
Okay, well, let our administrator talk about this. Go ahead, Mike.
So, it's Mr. Mansmith, right? Yeah, so, you participated in our public meetings
sure,
about 5 years ago as well.
sure, and then I've visited you here before.
Right, so we've talked about this,
Sure.
so. Just to provide clarification for the full board, so I was only made aware of the most recent issue from Mr. Husnick. So he came in and you called him and so,
Sam was out there. When I talked to Sam, he took time from his busy job and came and walked and couldn't even get to part of it.
yes, he had told me that, so that he was planning to go out there, so. I encouraged him to communicate to you that to get in touch with us, so we were not aware. We have been out there previously.
One of your assistants was out. And
Yeah.
it wasn't during a time when it was a problem. But I have been anticipating this problem.
Mm,
And you've got 20 acres of woods next to it that they don't do a thing. It's like you're gonna get a tornado sooner or later, something's gonna happen.
mhm.
But when you're 83 years old, it's kind of hard to tackle this stuff.
Well, it's something I think that the board is trying to address, because there are a lot of these private ditches, so we had walked out there about 4 or 5 years ago with Dave Adams of Public Works. And so there's just a differentiation. Of what constitutes the MS4, like a ditch responsible by a government entity versus something that's private. So, and this flows through a number of private properties from yours. So, I'm not disputing at all that there couldn't be an issue
I
because,
don't think there's very many. There's one 20-acre piece, and then it goes across that road. And then it's in a swampy area, and that might be another one, and then it goes across the freeway. And maybe there's 4 or 5 at the most.
yeah, well, it's just that those private owners downstream of you are not maintaining any capacity, so,
Some of them don't even maintain their yards, so wouldn't expect them to.
yes, so one option, because if I recall correctly, I haven't looked at it recently, is that a portion of that property is wetland, and one of the things that the board is looking at is to try to provide capacity, so buying easements or things like that for flood mitigation, but this is in partnership with the city. There's a lot more work to be done on it, and Blaine didn't go out there then, right? You just met,
He said he would.
yeah.
He didn't. So after we had already done the work, he called me today and said, I might be able to come out Tuesday. Well, that isn't gonna do any good on Tuesday.
Well, we've had many complaints this particular year, just as we did in post 2014 or 15 with the high water levels.
This-
But
Like I said, I've been there 58 years. This is not a high water level here for me. On my farm, 58 years of living there. This is not a high water here. For me,
okay,
it is high because the ditch was dammed.
okay. Well, I was, like I said, we were only made aware that there was a particular issue just within the last couple of days, so.
Yeah,
But,
I came in and talked to.
Yeah.
To Blaine.
mm,
He was very courteous, but he informed me that the mission of this group was for Forest Lake and Comfort Lake.
well, and all the water that drains to each, so all the, I mean, we're also just dealing with private property owners and so.
It's
And
not just the lakes.
yes,
It's a
No, but-
water problem, however the problem exhibits itself. So it is not just about lakes. That's not our mission, just to
That's
be
what
clear.
Blaine said to me, and I was,
Well, I apologize for that, but that is not our mission, never has been. It's to understand the water flow within our boundaries, which is right there on the map. And, ditches are a problem, and especially in that purple area, which is the Comfort Lake primary sub-watershed. And so it goes all the way to where you're talking about, where you live, and then comes in through the industrial area of Forest Lake. And one of the problems has been not having a complete infrastructure map for stormwater as the city has developed. So that's part of your ditch. Is it a valid ditch or is it a
Well,
personal ditch?
you know, it's not personal, but I'm sure it's no longer a government ditch, you know.
Okay,
I'm sure it was at one time, because when I was stumbling through that woods.
Yeah.
It's a huge bank that's still there. When it
Mhm.
was dug, it must have been a drag line. I wouldn't doubt it. It goes back to like 1914.
probably, but that would be in Washington County. You live in Washington County still, right? Where you're at? Okay. I think that's the first thing we have to do is look to see if that is a registered ditch. Because if it is, then the county hasn't been maintaining it. If it's a valid registered ditch.
I do know that across the road from me is Comfort. And last summer they were improving ditches all summer.
Comfort?
Comfort, Columbus.
Oh, Columbus, yeah. Mhm.
Columbus.
Okay.
Across the street, there, within a mile of my home, they were doing ditching and cleaning things out. Well, it's not, I don't know whose fault it is that people build houses, but when you build a house and then something isn't maintained for however years it has been, I don't know whose responsibility it is.
Yeah. That's in Oak County.
Across the street from me, I'm right on the
Correct.
county line.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you look at the partnership map, Lower St. Croix, there's an awful lot of water that comes through that part of, that's the portion that's part of our Lower St. Croix. That little, probably 5% of Anoka County comes through Anoka, through Washington, and then down to Chisago County.
That very little,
Comfort.
yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Well, if you're talking about ditch improvements in the county that's right next to where you are. Right, and nothing's been done in Washington. I don't know if those two are connected, but that's why we need to look up the ditch and see if it's registered and what's been done on it.
I can't imagine the expense it would take to do that. The only way you could get through there would be to bulldoze down trees, and it would be a terrible
Yeah,
expense.
well, and maybe it's not even connected. I mean, that's the other thing. We just don't know.
But I do know, I'm a good friend of the commissioner for our area, Mr. Moran,
Mhm.
friend. He had a problem up on his farm and he had to sue them to do it.
Well, hopefully that's not gonna happen here.
I'm too old to start a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Does he pay a ditch levy?
Pardon me?
Does he get a ditch levy?
Do you have a ditch levy? She's asking. from
On your
Washington
tax
County?
statement, your property tax statement, is there a ditch
No.
levy?
The only
Line
thing
item?
I get is,
No.
Forest Lake, Comfort Lake, bill for $114 every year.
Mr. President, Manager said, when we looked at it previously with the city, it was, at the time, it was considered a private ditch, so we that was based off of that previous review. But we did not call, I was not involved with calling.
And if the ditch
Confirming with the county.
were filled up and if the ditch had never been done, what would the property look like? In this kind of rain,
Well, there's there's a lot of wetland.
it'd be underwater, right?
But no, you know what has happened? In 1968, the land right next to me was nice, beautiful high ground. They dug it out to the water table to put on the freeway. That was all used for fill for the freeway. So that totally was changed.
When was that?
1967,
Oh, okay, a long
68.
time ago, okay.
They had big earth movers there for 6 months, taking up all the, and then they get more sand, they dewatered it. Then, last year, they allowed a guy to go in there and build. And in order to build, there was big gravel trucks going past my house for days, so you could build it
Okay,
out.
so we're not gonna get this resolved tonight, so
No.
what is the action step to do there, Mike? Because we're usually,
Well,
we've already spent
so
more time than we're allowed.
we're in the public, comment period right now, just with, of the meeting. So, but
I
as
don't
far
know
as,
what you're reading.
as far as the budget goes, I mean, and we'll, as far as that piece, again, we'll communicate with Dave Adams, the city public, or City of Forest Lake Public Works Director. And have Dave go out there again. But just having from our previous conversations some years ago, that drainage area that is ditched across, I think you're about right. It's like 5 or 6 properties until it gets under 35.
Yeah.
And then into Bixby Park. So, so it's just a matter of that, over time, like you say, nothing's being maintained. There's sediment building up and
And the
Plant
topography,
decay.
the topography of the country totally changed when the state came and bought off. That was all high ground, they bought it off. Then they dewatered it to get more sand.
right, that's how through this, a lot of areas, former wetlands that has been filled, and a lot of it is, the method to.
Yeah, well,
They use sand to compress the ground and then they can build on it, so.
So you'll get, check with Dave Adams when you get back to decide what the situation is.
Right, we'll be in touch, Mr. Mayor, on that particular thing, so. But I had also offered to Mr. Guznick, to communicate to you to be in touch with us. And that there are some other things that I think that we could consider, but we'll do that we'll have that conversation outside of the
thank you
meeting.
for your time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing your problem to our attention, and
It's
we'll
a huge
investigate.
problem for someone my age. I planted those cedar trees. I look today, they're all brown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Council.
Council, just for the clarity of the record, is it the case that the public hearing on the budget and levy has been opened and then closed?
Yes, it has.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that.
So I'm not sure I did say close, did I?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
So I will then, well, actually, we're in the public open forum right now. So I'll go back and I'll close the public hearing. So that's closed. And I'll now close the public open forum. So that's closed. So then we'll move on to number 6, Citizen Advisory Committee update.
Mr. President, managers.
We should probably be briefed by the board, be briefed by the board on when a ditch goes private like that. Having expended all the advantages of a ditch for over 50 years of making property usable that wasn't usable before. Then isn't the responsible of the homeowner to take care of the ditch? We need to clarify that.
Right, I think, Mr. Holman would be in best position to do that at a later time.
Yeah, at a later time, right, so it's just something we should follow up on, because I'm sure this occurs more than more than once every 5 years, so.
Well, it's kind of central to some of our future discussions
Yeah.
about a lot of
And
this.
we should be briefed on what the policy is for that, I think. I have no
I'm
idea.
pretty clear on it.
Okay,
But I think the full board needs to obviously get up to speed on it. The first place to check though is that if it is a registered ditch with the county, and then that's a whole different problem.
okay. All right, we'll get back to the board then on that, Mike, and let us know how it's resolved.
Right, well, I mean, I just, it's public record, I did. Based off of the question, I looked at the tax statement, there's no tax for it, so. But even though there's the Met Council, the Transit, Control, the Watershed District, which is. Actually $31.63 for the year.
Not 114.
No, well, there's that other levy, so that's 135. I don't know what that comprises of, but that'd be a question for the county. Just for the record, I guess, just so, but there's just no
So what county is that in?
Washington. County.
Washington, okay.
Yep, so.
Right.
mhm.
Okay, so let's move on then to the Citizen Advisory Committee update. I think this will be brief. Is Aiden going to cover?
Yes, Mr.
Okay, thank you.
President, Aiden's here. Thank you, Aiden.
Thank you, Mr. President, managers. The Citizens Advisory Committee did not have a regularly scheduled meeting in August. Instead, we had our CAC hosted shoreline pontoon tour last night. And we were happy to have a couple managers there. It was a well-attended event, including members of the Forest Lake Association Board of Managers, some city staff, and some city council members. So my impression was it was a good event. We have lots of follow-up to do from that event, and we look forward to hosting future events on other lakes as well. And so we will be meeting, the Citizen Advisory Committee will be meeting in September, pardon me, on the 17th. And we will have another update for you then.
Thank you, Aiden. It was, for those of us on the tour, it was excellent. I think we had very good feedback from most people, and I think we converted some believers in the importance of natural shorelines. So I think it was an excellent job. You and Adam should be complimented, and any other staff that helped you. So it was well organized, timely, and everything else. So I mean, it's with 3 pontoon boats moving together. I thought we were going to really be delayed, but it worked out right on schedule.
I thought it was great, and I want to compliment you on being diplomatic when you were talking about the various types of shorelines. I thought you handled that like a true diplomat, so that was good. People don't like to hear that maybe what they've chosen isn't the right thing for the lake, so that takes a lot of diplomacy, and I commend you for that. I would suggest next time that you have a outdoor microphone of some type. It was kind of hard to hear speakers, at the furthest pontoon away, but I love that concept of actually getting people out on the water and looking at the property from the water. It was really helpful.
So again, thank you, Adam, and we'll look forward to the next one. So very, very well done. Appreciate it. Any other
Thank you.
questions for Adam before we leave? I mean, for Aiden, I'm sorry, Aiden. All right.
The 18.
The 18, right, the 18, A squared, okay. All right, very good, thank you. And let's move on then to aquatic invasive species update.
Mr. President and managers, so you have the update in the board packet. Biggest thing was the conducted a herbicide treatment, PLM did on for flowering rush on Forest Lake, end of July, and the staff have been out doing some seed cutting as well, or the flowers. And then again, so they did it in mid-August here. Blue Water Sciences completed some surveys of Eurasian water milfoil, and those maps are in the board packet of the 3 major lakes and the success of the treatments that has occurred. So any other comments or questions, you can take them now.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I was just going to just do an update on Comfort Lake. We have Chisago County funds to do this kind of treatment, but it was decided by the lake management folks that we deal with that we should wait until next season, which would be the spring of next year.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I just want to thank the staff. I know that you all volunteered or taken on different assignments to help pick up the slack on the AIS program, so the board really appreciates that effort, and I hope that you look at it as an opportunity to maybe gain some additional experience and knowledge in a new area. So again, we really appreciate the effort you're putting forth on that. Thank you. Okay, no other questions. We'll move on then to new business, the Clean Water Council letter, and I think Manager Anderson, you're gonna update us on that?
Yeah, I think everybody, if you can pull that up and show the packet, for those that may not have looked at it. We won't spend a lot of time here, but, it went well. Forest Lake, Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed, District, helped put that together for the Lower St. Croix. And the Lower St. Croix was one of the two, one watershed, one plan entities that, well, or organizations that were asked to present at the meeting this past Monday. And I talked to Barb Heitkamp, who was one of the presenters, as well as Fran Miron, our Washington County representative. And it went very well. There were very good questions asked at the end. Exciting thing, I believe, is the chart that the council uses when they're going through presentations like this and applications, preliminary applications or how to spend the money. And we were on the approved list, so that's good.
Is there a
And-
certain page you want me to pull up?
Yeah, I don't believe that they're gonna be able to see that, but go ahead through it. Just walk through that or go roll through that as we're talking. Our concept was to have the primary letter from the Lower St. Croix Partnership. And then we asked each partner to create one page, no more than 2 pages of what they have used funds for, separate from the partnership. And so you'll see ours coming along. This is from the Chisago SWCD, Chisago County, and here's ours. Ours, instead of being in narrative form, was in a chart form. And you're presenting technical information, and so this we felt was going to be a lot easier to read. You can see the total dollars. You can hold here for a minute. The total dollars amount and the total improvement. The middle column is phosphorus. The column on the right is for suspended solids. And we have a little note, as you can see, starred underneath that chart that explains to the council. It's 28 members, so it's a lot of people from different avenues. And it's the 3,256 pounds of phosphorus, of course, stops 1.6 million pounds of algae from growing each year. And so we wanted to make sure that we were highlighting those statistics, and then, of course, thanking them for, I'll go up just a little bit more. With a comment there at the end, we could not have achieved these outcomes without access to the clean water grants, and that is a very true statement, obviously. And the list incorporated all of our projects going back to the beginning. I forget the first year of the project, but it was 2012. There we go. So anyway, go on. The rest of them were all narratives like that. And so we thought ours stood out, which we liked. But the bottom line is that everybody was saying the same thing. You know, this is how we've used the funds. This is how important it is for us. Please don't reduce or eliminate any of the funding, because especially with the one watershed, one plan regional concept, which is what the state and the council is always promoting, is work together. Don't do this just for your own little entity, but work together so that there's more regional impact and lasting impact. And I think we did a good job with this, and obviously the council liked the presentation, and we don't know yet if they're still going to reduce funding, but they are going to fund. We're not going to lose funding. We just don't know if it's going to be reduced, okay? So that's good news.
Any questions for Manager Anderson? Okay, hearing none, I'd just like to again, thank Manager Anderson for the extra time and effort she put into driving this home, and I think that the table that we put forth is a nice highlight recognition of how we run our operation in terms of the metrics we use, the quantification and so forth. It stood out as being delivering a lot of value in one page, so I think it's
I
really
think it's
good.
results.
Yeah,
It's what
right.
it's showing is results, and that's what these funds are for, is implementation. So, anybody looking at that would
Would stand out,
understand
yeah.
that we did a lot. Yeah,
So thanks again, Manager Anderson.
sure.
All right, moving on then, we've got old business. First item is 9A, the floodplain modeling update, which we've all been waiting for.
Mr. President, managers, so we do have UR staff here as well. Just kind of open up, this has been certainly an item that's been in discussion for some time with the board. And just to provide a little more background, we had some earlier discussion in the springtime. The board had met a couple of times, early May, early June, and then I think on the June 13th board meeting, authorized phase 2, which is the material that's it's in the memo for the board to review and discuss. In addition, then there's just also just noting that we put in what amounts to an additional scope. So just to kind of keep things moving along for the board's consideration. So we can either give Cecilio a few minutes to kind of go over this if the board wants, or just start asking, or just start having some discussion. Maybe first on phase 2, the results, and then after that, we can go into the memo or the scope for phase 3.
Okay.
So is this updated to the last memo that we got? Right, it was revised on the 21st, so what we're looking at is the same revision?
But
Memo?
the board packet is updated.
Okay,
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep, I updated it yesterday.
Well, I think an overview is always helpful.
Okay.
So, especially for our visitors, so.
Mr. Olivier, can you provide an update or a little overview?
Sure.
I know you have Mr. Yu here as well.
Yeah.
And Dr. Wilkinson.
Yeah, I have to apologize. My video and audio don't work very well today, but so Mr. President, managers, before we start, I wanted to introduce you to another member of the UR team, Bill Yu. Where are you, Bill? Okay, there you go. So he works out of our office in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, and has a civil engineer degree, master's in water resources engineering, University of Alberta, and specializes in hydrologic and hydraulic models. He's the one that performed the modeling for this phase 2 of the flood risk assessment and wrote most of the memos. So I just wanted to show him around and say that basically so that he's the one that is behind everything here. I'm going to be presenting. I don't have a presentation per se. I do have a number of notes in here that maybe I'd like to go through and more like a big level comprehensive approach. So the phase 2 report that you have in front of you, it deals with the Sunrise River and Shields Lake drainage area. If you recall, there was a meeting a while ago in which the GIS exercise of identifying areas, priority areas, was presented by Camilla. At that point, the board decided that it would probably make sense to have the Sunrise River and the Shields Lake drainage areas to be prioritized, say, well, let's see how that goes, and then maybe we'll think about the rest of the watershed. So at that point in time, we were discussing, I suggested that maybe the best way to go about it would be, we have a model that is very comprehensive, that is really good, but it's calibrated. Why don't you just go and run the flooding scenarios and see what the model says, and then we move from there, decide what to do afterwards. So that's what this is. And we basically put together a model, look at a number of events. We look at the current precipitation, 100 years, and then also the future climate conditions in terms of related to the potential climate impact and how that it will impact the intensity and also the depth of the storm events. So we run both of them, and basically what the model told us is what is in the memo, which is tell us where the flooding is located, what is the flooding footprint, how that footprint increases or decreases with the intensity of the storm, and also how many structures are affected in terms of roads, houses, schools, and you can basically look at the roads and look at the total length of the road and see how much of the length of the road is affected. So it's a pretty good base, something that comes out of the model is unusually detailed for the type of model that we have, which is watershed wide. But the one thing that we found is that there are some shortcomings, and I would like to illustrate those shortcomings by just as an example that is included in the memo, and that is figure 11, which you have it in there. So I mean, in this picture you can see that, look at the War Mall parking lot north of 3rd Avenue. The 100-year storm event shows fairly clear detailed flooding situation. As you go south of 3rd Avenue, you have Target there, and yes, it shows some flooding associated with the parking lot. You go to the lower left part of the graphic here, and this is the ACTS auto repair area, and you can see that it is also shows some flooding. Now, if you go to the North Lakes Academy, there is nothing there. So the issue here is it's not necessarily that the model is wrong, but it is not detailed enough to be able to catch them. So, like for instance, in this particular case, when we talk about defining better, adding accuracy to the model, in this particular case, the only thing we will really have to do is look at this area around North Lakes Academy and add another sub area there. So in this area that is yellow, we will be able to get more accurate information of flooding and location if we, instead of having that area in yellow, we'll actually partition and have 3 or 4 areas out. So it's a clear example of why we need to recommend that we need to do something to improve the accuracy of the model. Although, as I said, I mean, it's a pretty good first step. So basically, the recommendation of phase 2 is to let's add some resolution to the model. There are a lot of recommendations, and the phase 2 memo is complex. I mean, there are a lot of things, but that's basically what we say. So then, when we go from the phase 2 to the phase 3, what is different, and why are we proposing this? So, in very simple terms, the first thing we're going to do is add accuracy to the results of phase 2. That's fairly simple. It is going to happen just because we're going to be dividing the watersheds in little pieces. We're going to be able also to add resolution. Right now, we have the contours that are about 5 feet that are not detailed enough. We'll be able to look at these contours and look at the every 1 or 2 feet contours, and we'll be able to have more detail in terms of the elevation. we're gonna be able to see the depth of flooding in a better way, but also we're gonna be able to see what is the length of time of flooding. So in other words, if you're looking at a particular road that will be flooded by half a foot, let's say, it is not the same as flooded by half a foot in 10 minutes or flooding by half a foot 3 days. So that type of detail in terms of the timing of the flooding, we'll be able to do that too. We're going to be able to look at the flow, what is called the flow paths, in which direction flow goes. And this is where the 2D, two-dimensional modeling enters. And that's important because, I mean, it's not only the flooding that you have and the duration of the flooding, but it's also where the flow goes. And sometimes there may be a situation in which you have flooding, and also you have significant amount of velocity and flow going in a particular direction. So we want to capture that. Of course, on top of that, we are going to be looking at the social and environmental components that will be incorporated in the analysis. And if you remember, infrastructure was one part, and social and environmental. So we'll be doing that as part of phase 3. And then finally, we are going to be, in a very general way, we're going to be recommending for strategic planning purposes, how we can minimize impacts and improve the community resiliency. So that's part of phase 3. And the idea is that we come to have a pretty good idea of what the flooding is, the structure that are going to affect the houses, the duration, et cetera, that we will be able to bring to the next phase, which is basically just a public involvement phase. And we'll be able to talk about those things with something to show the cities and the residents, the stakeholders, I guess, and say, this is what we found, and what do you think about it? Are we getting it right? Is anything that we're missing? And be able to use that as a reference base for the discussion. Sometimes if you go to public meetings and just show a map, like, well, sometimes people don't really participate. So that's the idea. And then, so that will be the next public involvement phase that you guys hired. The board hired a company to be able to do that. It's going to be helping staff through that public involvement, and also Camilla and our staff will be involved, but just in involvement. And that's basically the future, the next steps that we're thinking about. And if Camilla's around or not, she's around or not, but she had a meeting yesterday with Emily, and they were talking about what will be the next steps. And maybe if there are some questions, she can answer those questions. But that, sorry, it was kind of a long presentation. But that's basically the process and how the different phases tie together. So I'll be open to questions.
Does anybody have questions? Comments? I do have one question, Cecilio. I'm still not clear on on your diagrams, your photographs, you have a flooding depth in feet, and then it's a scale from white to black. I have a hard time understanding the concept of 1,500 feet flooding. Is that supposed to be acre feet, or can you explain that on the chart?
Yeah, it is. It is what the dot is put there. I mean, it's not a comma, it's a dot. So we're talking about 15 feet. And then we're looking at whatever is the other one, 15 feet. So it's 1.5 feet to 5 feet, 5 feet to 15 feet, and more than 15 feet. And then the Y would be less than 1.5 feet, I guess. It is confusing because it has 3 zeros after the dot. So I mean, the first reaction, whoa, wait a second. But it is not a comma, it's a dot. So it's
Okay.
Decimal points.
And the other question I had is that it looks like you're comparing, when you say existing to future, you're saying like you take an existing 100-year rain and you compare it to the future 100-year rain. Is that correct? On the side-by-sides?
Correct. And yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I have a couple of comments on that, but yeah, that's the way it's presented.
It makes it hard to see the difference. And I when I had proofed this before, I had suggested we put like a 1 year new compared to 100-year new. And then you could definitely see it, because I can't see any difference between these charts. I'm sorry, I've got bad eyes, but they're not that bad, I think.
Yeah,
And,
part of
so
it-
it's- if you're gonna use this with the public, I think people are gonna struggle with this, and maybe there's other techniques you can use to get it more, visible, but, because there is a big difference there. I mean, you look at the number of acres, doubles from like a 1 to 100-year range, so. But that's something, you know, we can deal with later in the future. I just want to make a comment on that again. It's,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good comment, and I mean, the purpose of this was just, I mean, it was a very quick exercise to show what offers, but those are good comments. I think going through phase 3, we're going to be able to discriminate more about that, and I think you're absolutely right. We need to show the graphics in a different way, because right now it's like, well, what's the difference here? So
Okay.
you don't see it. But if you look at figure 10 in the report, that's an example of how going from 100-year existing to 100-year future, it does have, you know, it is, I mean, it is kind of a close up of the map. So you have I mean, you see that a little bit better than if you're just basically looking at, you know, in a bigger scale, and you will not see those changes. So there are changes, but it's difficult to see, and we're gonna be presenting this much better, obviously, and
Great.
this gonna
Okay.
go to the public.
okay, any other questions? Manager Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have these age-old question I always ask is how accurate is the infrastructure mapping from Forest Lake?
We got the information for the downtown area that they have been modeling apparently intensively the last couple of years, and we feel pretty comfortable with that. We got our road elevations. We feel good about that. I mean, we have that's probably accurate, as accurate as could be. And then, you know, house elevation, things like that, we're gonna have to use the topo maps, and those have a resolution of plus minus 1 foot 2 feet. So we're not gonna be able to be as accurate in those areas, but when it corresponds to roads and anything that it's city structure, where manholes are, where catch basins are, all that, you know, we'll be able to determine pretty well. The city has not, I mean, the only place that the city have been modeling really is downtown. Then they have an area going to Shields Lake, draining to Shields Lake, and then what is called the North Shore Trail. They have done some modeling there, but other than that, there is really nothing. I mean, if you look at the picture of the city, you know, almost everything is what we have done in terms of, hey, this is the model we created. We gave it to them. They are using it for their own purpose. And then the south part of the city is Rice Creek modeling. So the city by itself has not been done a lot of modeling. They have done the downtown, which is probably the most critical, but you know, that's basically it.
So what happens when the city of Forest Lake is doing developments? I thought they were going to be creating this infrastructure map as they were developing. So are they doing that? I mean, they've got some big developments over in that area. Do we not have the connection to a city treatment facility? Is that what you're saying?
No, the modeling that they have done in downtown is pretty detailed, and not only the structures but also the catch basin, manholes, pipe elevations, sizes of pipes, the slope of pipes, all that is pretty well documented. This is what we're using ourselves now to be able to be more accurate. So that's documented and well documented. I don't know exactly how they looked at the improvements in that area. I would assume that they'd run the model, you know, to determine what those improvements are. I mean, they have a detailed model, so they do that. We could definitely help them once we have our model in place to verify that or to give them ideas, I guess. The one thing that is a little bit of a can of worms is that the model they are using is a fairly old model. It is not up in the technology of, you know, what is called SWIM. You know, it's like a more sophisticated version, a platform. And so the reason why they have that is because they started doing the modeling a while ago with that, and they didn't change really to the most up-to-grade platform. So there are different platforms, but that's okay, because what we have done when we get their model, we get the information, is we just concentrate on everything that is topography and system, and then we include all that in our model as an input, and we don't really have to connect with their model that is older and cannot really be connected. So it is a little bit of issue there, because when the city will be done with their modeling, it will not be in the same platform that we have, because they're using
So
an older platform.
they're not accounting for climate change is what you're saying, right? The predictions, the projections, I should say, for climate change precipitation events?
Well, I mean, I think they could if they use the input, but my point is that the model that they have is not as accurate as this model, which is a more next generation model that everybody uses. It's called XP-Swim and or PC Swim. So
Yeah,
it would be different in a different platform.
Okay, so phase 2 and 3, just so I'm clear, you're saying these are going to be for the priority areas that were identified, the Shields Lake area and the Comfort Lake sub watershed area, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
On the Sunrise, okay.
And it's gonna be the result's gonna be quite different from this. I mean, you will see the graphics and it will be different.
Mhm.
So why don't we move on then to the second step, which is advancing the next modifications we want to make. And we have a motion on that, so maybe we can make the motion. And then we can have Celio take us through and show us the specifics that you were asking about, Manager Anderson.
All right, I'll make the motion to authorize the administrator on advice of council to enter into an agreement with EOR in accordance with the August 20th scope of work and in an amount not to exceed $40,187.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Manager Lowe. So we have a motion and a second. So why don't we then, Cecilio, go through what comments you wanted to make, and then we can ask if there are any questions before we vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really. You have the proposal in front of you. There's a lot of technical issues in here and comments and stuff like that. But what I would like to reemphasize is what is the purpose of this, and the purpose of this third phase is, as I mentioned, increase the accuracy of phase 2, add resolution to the model to be able to actually look at the 1 foot versus 5 feet, look at the depth of flooding, how long, the duration of flooding, look at flow paths. We're going to be looking at, for instance, this particular map that you have, we're going to be able to see where the flow goes under flooding conditions and how quickly. And that's basically it. The other one's about social and environmental components incorporated and recommendations for to minimize impacts and improve community resilience. Is kind of similar to what we have in phase 2, but it's going to be expanded. And then the one thing that I would like to mention, though, is that if you look at figure 1 and figure 2, these are the areas that we are going to be incorporating more detail to them, because there is information that the city has right now that they gave us to us in the past, but now they have done more. They've been getting their maps more accurately, and we are going to be using that information. So figure 1 and 2, those are the areas we're going to be, actually, for that matter, 3 and 4, that we're going to be really getting into the details of what is going on there. The rest, it will be significant change because of the additional, as I was mentioning before, these additional areas that are going to be added. But what is going to be really, really detailed modeling would be the areas that we're going to get information from the city. That would be the ones that are in figure 1 and figure 2.
And then if you look at figures 3 and 4 with the cross hatching and the color, can you explain how that differs from the first 1 and 2 that you showed us?
Yeah, I think what it is that we so when you get the information that I was mentioning, we need to decide how we're going to be dealing with that area. And sometimes the only thing you have to do is just basically partition But then those are areas that we are going to be doing what I mentioned is the 2D modeling. So those are the areas that we're not only going to partition to be more accurate, but we are going to use the 2D modeling, knowing where the water goes, at what point, how houses or roads get flooded, where the water is coming from, at what velocity. So that's the purpose of those. It just indicate that this is, and 2D it's I mean, it's not a trivial exercise. It requires time, but we like to do it in that fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Manager Anderson.
I just have one remaining question, and that's the timeline to get this next data collection and report together. What are we looking at?
We are shooting for 2 months, and we want to move on this thing very quickly. As I said, it's not a trivial exercise, but we like to have this finalized, the last week of October, first week of November. And I have to mention also, sorry for feedback, but because there has to be some kind of public involvement in this. The idea to be to initiate those contacts of public involvement before this is finalized, and we have we have like partial results and stuff like that. We can start actually bringing that to the public. So it will happen. It will happen concurrently.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, you do mention that stakeholders' communication and public involvement components are not part of this budget. So does that mean in our outreach to the public, we will need to figure out how to do that ourselves or have another consultant help us with that? Or can you just comment on that, please?
Yeah, this is going to be a very small amount. I mean, you guys are already, the board is already thinking about that. There was a public involvement company that was hired. That company is going to be interacting with staff quite a bit, and we are going to be involved in those meetings, but we're not going to lead in the meetings or anything like that. It would be just Camila maybe going to some meetings, maybe I'm going to some meetings and show the maps. But it's. I just wanted to make clear this is not part of this, but it's not a tremendous effort.
All right.
Can I comment on that quickly?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
In talking with Emily, so your board just approved the scope of services with Zan Associates, who's leading the stakeholder engagement component. EOR, and EOR's time to participate in that and help plan the meetings and incorporate the technical information that Cecilio and Bill are working on. That would come as a separate scope, and Emily was hoping to bring that to the board at the September 26th meeting. We have a meeting scheduled with Zan Associates with Adam on September 13th when Emily gets back. So we'll know a little bit more about how much assistance they need.
Okay, Camilla, thank you. I wasn't aware of that, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Okay, yep, good.
I should have known, maybe, I don't know.
We had a lot going on. This was approved in the June 13th meeting.
So that's great. That answers my question. It sounds like we're all lined up here perfectly, so that's great. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Go ahead, Madam Taves.
Figure 10 there is the one that really, I just kind of have a hard time moving away from that one. That kind of validates the whole process that we're working on here. The difference between what we assume to be a 100-year rainfall event as opposed to dealing with this climate resiliency issue here. That branch from 61 on to 8 there would be completely buried underwater. So I think these are the kinds of things that this project is going to be very instrumental in helping us resolve down the road for people to. It makes a lot of sense. I applaud the efforts here.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this particular case is just the difference between existing 100-year and future climate change 100 years. So those conditions are really going to be driven by climate change. But it's quite different.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have the concern that if you're talking to the public, you're comparing a 100-year normal with a 100-year future. That's not the way that, we don't have that kind of situation. What we have is we have a 1-year normal and we compare it to a 100-year future. And then you're going to see some real differences, right? And people are going to say, oh my God. Because you're showing a big increase, even like what's a 30% increase just in between the 200-year ones, but it's going to be like, I don't know, 200% increase the other way around. So
Yeah,
anyway, just a
yeah.
thought, and we have to deal with the public on this, and we should try to make it as realistic as possible, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah, definitely, we
that
can
one-
improve.
That 1 year comparison though is accurate to the recent past, correct? I mean, that's maybe a foundational issue that you should address is how are you calculating the 1 year average? What
So
period
we
of
have,
time?
well, there are ways in which this can be modeled. Typically, what we model is what is called the 1 year, 24-hour event, which it is roughly, I think it is maybe 2.5 inches or three inches, in 24 hours. That's the way typically it's done. There are other events, obviously, that could be more intense. And that's based on the latest information that we have after Atlas 14 was created. So those numbers that have been changed quite a bit actually from previous numbers that we were using, those are pretty accurate in terms of determining what is the precipitation in this area. When it comes to future conditions, in terms of, when I say future conditions, I'm talking about something that would be like a 2050, 2060. I mean, something that will be in the future, but that could be really affected. What's climate change that affecting? Then that it becomes a little bit more difficult to kind of gauge. And in the memo, I mentioned that there is a 90% confidence interval. We don't need to get into the details, but yeah. But I mean, it is right now the 1 year under new conditions in terms of the data that we have. Yeah, it's the base condition, the watershed.
Current period though, not going back 50 years, but looking at what, the last 10 years to come up with an average, the last 5 years?
That data set that we're saying is representing existing conditions is the data set available through 2012. So now
Okay.
we're in 2024, so that's the sort of issue with all of this information is it becomes outdated. NOAA is in the process of updating the data sets, but that's a lengthy process. But when they do update it, will take climate change projections into consideration. So the data that we will have available to project what we think will happen will be different than what we're using now.
Mhm. What about the quadrant? What about that quadrant chart that we see from the University of Minnesota, which is showing the trend of fewer events, but more intense events? And everything's moving up to the upper right-hand quadrant, which is more severe storms. So how is that data collected? It seemed to me that we would want to use what we're experiencing now and have been for the last several years, because we've seen that already. So
Yeah, and so that's why it's good to use the data that's on that 90th confidence interval, because those are the more extreme events from the actual precipitation data. The board may remember that we presented a memo a couple of years ago explaining how people simulate future conditions. So there's lots of ways that you can do it. One of the ways is using the NOAA values on the 90th percentile, but you could also use, the storm that happened in Duluth and just put that right here and say, what would it look like if we got that much rainfall in that period of time? Or you could do, like Houston did for the Rice Creek Watershed District and say, we're just going to increase what we think, the current values by 20%. So there's lots of ways that you can do it. So when people say we did this under future climate conditions, we need to ask the question, how are you simulating those future climate conditions? The data set that we're using is data that many people are familiar with. So we're not introducing something new. And that was part of our recommendation to the board early in this process, that you stick with the data that NOAA has published so that people understand what that is.
which is 2012.
The 90th percentile would represent what's on the extreme upper bound of that data set, and that's what people are using to simulate what we think will happen in the future.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember that 90th percent.
Okay, any other questions before we vote?
confidence and Gentrified, yeah, okay.
Okay, hearing none, then I'm gonna ask for Tori to do the roll call vote on the resolution.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye. So the motion carries, so we're on our way again, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, next one is the state of the watershed update.
Well, Mr. President, managers, Adam John was here to give an update on that. I guess.
Mr. President, managers, just a quick update. I think we're right on track for our process. Invitations have been out for a couple weeks now. This week, tomorrow, and then next week, I'll do a push again. Right now, we're sitting at like 30 RSVPs. I would like 50 at least. So we'll do another push. A lot of folks don't sign up till the week before, it seems like, but we did have a press release in the Chisago paper this week, so that should help as well. Nominations committee, Manager Anderson, myself, and then we'll have some citizen advisory, 3 citizen advisory that'll work on the watershed champion. Manager Anderson, you'll get an email from me tomorrow. We're waiting on one more citizen advisory person, and then we'll get some dates for that. If you have folks in mind, certainly give me some nominations. If you need help writing them, I can help you. Right now we have 2 folks, that's it. So thank you to Manager Baki. He submitted one and staff submitted another one. So otherwise, yeah, logistics, I think we're right on track. We'll just shake the tree a little bit and get some more folks to sign up.
Good, thank you, Adam. Any questions for Adam? Okay, hearing none, we'll move then on to the 2025 budget. And Emily's not here, so Mike will be filling in for her. What we decided to do was to cover the topics that we were in question at the last meeting. And that basically is to spend some time looking at, well, start with the total budget, then look at the projects that we have got scheduled because we've got grants, and then looking at the projects that we hope to get when the new grants come in, which will beef up our total project list, which was the concern of Manager Anderson. Then we were gonna move into the question of, I think, because if we increase it 24%, we get extra dollars. What else can we do with those dollars? And so staff went back and worked with EOR and staff, and they came up with a separate chart here for that we're gonna go through. And then the last question we asked was to compare ourselves to other watershed districts in terms of the increases we've been taking, how the variability of our budget, how it compares to estimated market value, and then also how it compares to percent of estimated market value, which shows whether we're high or low compared to other watershed districts in the district that we have. So that's what Mike's gonna run through, and then from there, we can then have any additional discussion and hopefully maybe decide how we wanna vote on this whole thing. So, Mike, do you wanna, does that make sense? If you have any other questions, be sure that we can bring them up and you can ask them.
Sure. Mr. President, managers, just again, that in the memo, you know, it states their draft levy by September 15th. It's a final levy. So just making sure we're correcting that statement. So this is the expense revenue budget based off of the last meeting, currently a 5% levy increase. You know, so, and I guess we went through this earlier in the presentation to the board, or in the hearing part. I don't know if we want to go to the next slide. That's right. So these are the ones that, again,
That are in the budget now.
yeah, they're in the budget.
2 pages of them.
Yeah, so on the next one.
Is in the budget also.
Yeah, that's right. So we have these presently secured. Again, that Bone Lake South one, we haven't taken receipt of the money. That would be a case where once we would have to close on the property and then we would get the money and then make the adjustments to the budget accordingly during that time frame. So next one, please. So we've just submitted these first two grants yesterday. So the first one is for the Heath Avenue Iron Hansen filter, and the other one is the Sunrise River Headwaters. It's the AIG, it's the Advanced Implementation Grant. So we're also looking to submit a $90,000 grant for pollinator pathways, so that just as it's stated. And then there are other ones to look at in terms of the climate resiliency greenway piece. In addition to one thing they've talked about with the board is once we get some of the modeling done, is potentially, do a direct request to the legislature, given the sort of the inverse proportion of the acreage of wetland, open water, floodplain, et cetera, within the district compared to then the buildable land that creates the taxable market value. So it's, given them sort of the inverse responsibility that the district has to address all these water resources issues. So
What is meant by Sunrise River Headwaters?
so that's the within the Comfort Lake and Little Comfort Lake management districts. So we've talked about this. We are looking to do some further investigation, modeling and other things. We submitted a grant for $100,000 to Bowser. They've reopened those AIG grant funds to investigate opportunities. So we just said, we're closing in on these. Obviously, even like the Heath Avenue one, we don't have 100% of the treatment that we're looking just out of that particular area. So how do we know that there's something going on between School Lake and Little Comfort, but it's not very evident. We requested to do some beaver analog dams in that section, but the DNR won't allow us. So we're proposing to do some additional cross-section sampling and analysis to see is a lot of that material that's there natural, or was it sediment and organic matter that came in from past erosion and it's just built up and then it's working its way through, and then is that the basis for some remediation in the future? We just don't know. So we're asking for funds to investigate those areas more thoroughly.
Okay.
So
Okay, because that term has been used as the southeastern part, I would guess, maybe is appropriate. Maybe even in the middle of the Forest Lake area coming from the south. So that has been described as the Sunrise River Headwaters. I've never believed that, but I always think that it's more of the Sunrise River coming from, Anoka and into Chisago in Washington County first, and then Chisago. Down the Sunrise River in that particular area. So I just wanted to make certain what we're talking about there. And this is between School Lake and Little Comfort, then is what you're talking about.
the entire drainage
The
area.
entire drainage. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
So, right, so it's that particular area is. We have to take it up with the
It's
state.
a wetland. It's a
Yeah.
wetland from border to border, basically.
Right.
Okay.
All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So this would be a potential scenario of what the expense or revenues would look like for 20%, 24% levy increase. And we do have the net or the current tax capacity increase of 9.8 8%. And again, just those totals out of this particular scenario, still looking to what it would do to the change in the levy. Really, ultimately, probably looking at mostly just addressing, the reserve fund with some of this additional dollars, so.
Or going into the debt service fund for the MPCA loans.
Correct.
Because we're going to be, and we're in the period where we have to take $500,000 a year to pay the loans that we knew was coming. So we either reduce our operating pool to take that 500,000 out, or for this period of time, we add it to the increased levy. I think just for Denise's and the press's benefit, I just want to talk about the stepped process that we've used in the past for budgeting, which is every 5 years or so, we do a larger increase, but then we hold it steady. So it's really a dollar amount that we're budgeting for, not a percentage amount. And so that stays constant, and over that period, the taxpayer actually has an advantage as their house values go up, the percentage of our levy is actually less. So we don't have that steady increase that you see with a lot of governments. You know, it's 2%, 3%, 4% on an ongoing basis. So I just wanted to, you probably remember that from sitting in on past meetings, but that's the concept, in the recommendation I made to increase the levy by 24%.
The valuations are going down and just like that.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah,
They haven't
2%.
adjusted. Yeah, I know. I talked to the person that does our,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't always go up.
well, it doesn't always go up, but it's more likely to do that.
Oh, yeah,
And
usually.
the reduction was a land value reduction. They had especially lake properties valued too high. Yeah,
Well, it's based on market too. The market's been kind of down.
well, not really, not on a lot of
That's
properties.
Their
Some,
data.
yeah, the rural
Yeah.
data, yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. So we, based on the request then, from I think Manager Loth here, we had asked, what would we do with the extra money? And this is a scenario based off of, really, well, just the assumption that nothing was changing between the earlier point of the budget and then, the end of the year. The only caveat really noted is on, we're likely, or at this point, given that we have 2 full-time staff that are not currently on payroll, and the process for replacing them is maybe not as immediate because of discussion with the board about what type of individual would be posted for, and then you go through the posting and hiring process. We really wouldn't look to have even the first person on board until the first of next year. So we'll have those salary savings through the rest of 2024 here. So here's just some smaller dollar amounts that we would look to add into some different areas, stream monitoring, education outreach, and floodplain and climate resiliency. So based off of the original budget and increases accordingly. Next, please. So here's the next slide is on some comparative basis of against some other watershed districts that we thought would be important for the board to have. Within the expense budget, you can see that there's quite a variation there in the third column, the 23 to 24. Ours is down, but others are significantly up, and then others are also down even further. And that has a lot to do with the nature of watershed districts. and capital projects that come into play that can greatly swing a budget from one year to the next. The next area there in the top, the levy, the middle three columns, we're at 6% from last year, for 23 to 24. And, close to the middle of the pack there, the average of 5.1. The EMV that, came in, again, we're close to the middle of the pack, just a little bit under on that one. And then down below, the tax impacts, it's, again, I have made the statement that because of the district's, I guess we have an abundance or a blessing of a large amount of water resources to deal with, right? So we have all these major lakes, and then, even with the small ones, we can count 20, while other larger districts, sometimes only have a couple of lakes to deal with as far as management. Maybe they have more ditches or things like that, but so given all that, then the tax impact on the medium household, and then going, by, across what we see in the, at least Washington County tax structure, it's not exactly, and you'll see in the next slide, it's not exactly a linear change, but rather a curve increase or going forward, but the levy to the EMB for the district here, we're at the highest. And again, because it's, we just don't have the tax capacity as like other watershed districts. So
Yeah, those numbers are small, but if you look at ours at 0.0535%, small number, but if you look at the Browns Creek, which is the next closest to us, we're 38% higher than they are. And if you go down to the lowest one, which would be Rice Creek at 0.0175, we're 300% higher than they are. And if you take the average of 0.0296, which is close to Valley Branch, we're 84% higher than that. So, we're quite a bit higher. So if you had to defend a 24% increase and people really wanted to get into the numbers, it might be difficult. So I just wanted to point that out percentage wise.
But I think Mike just explained why that happens. It depends on your watershed, what you're dealing with. So it's not an apples to apples comparison.
No, but it certainly affects the taxpayer that way, though. So that's what my concern is. I mean, I look at my statement and I see you went up 24%, and I find out that it's actually 300% higher than other watersheds. They're not going to get into all the details. So I just think it's something we have to consider. So we wanted to look how we compare. We wanted to see how we compare. So this is what we came up with in terms of what the data tells us. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Well, I think what Manager Anderson, I think, is saying is that the numbers actually support a higher increase based on the lack of property value, or based on the excess amount of the amount of lakes and the lack of higher property taxes in certain areas because of the amount of lakes and wetlands that aren't taxed like a residential lot. Is that my understanding of what that number is showing? Or does it just depend on how you want to interpret it?
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Manager, so I mentioned that we don't have a number in here that states specifically the percentage of land area, but we do know from past analysis that the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District does have a tremendous amount of wetland, lake, floodplain area. So there are a lot more water resources to manage. But to me, kind of going back again to some previous statements, I feel like this is more of the case that we can make to the state or requesting additional funds, rather than placing it on the burden of all, local taxpayers, because the the enjoyment is done by, we know from our watercraft inspection program that we have people, on a daily basis coming from other counties and even other states into the watershed district to use our water, those particular water bodies, let alone then all the, the wetland and floodplain areas that we also have some level of involvement with. And of course, earlier during the public hearing, I heard from a landowner expressing concern about the condition of his property, which I know from past analysis that there's a lot of wetland area. So, there might be the case of, if we were to get the support to get a larger request into the state to acquire easements or, go through, we've talked to Lessard Sames, Dr. Heritage Fund staff about this, creating a program. This concept of a greenway corridor using through water resources would be unique in the state. And, is really the basis of something that we could put together in the next grant cycle next spring. As well as a direct request through our legislators to fund some activities in that area. So, I mean, this is just the analysis on the levy versus the market value, but we do know is that a lot of property is very limited in its footprint. And then we talk about setbacks and other things, let alone, one of the things that we're really looking to do out of the work with the H&H modeling with the district engineer is to give municipalities the mapping information to say, okay, right now, here's a low floor elevation that you may have on record, but maybe you need to raise that 6 inches or a foot or something else. And then you take even more land out of the possibility of being built upon. So it's some really challenges when you are in fact in this headwater area. I mean, that's the nature, this division between the Rice Creek area and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake going into the Sunrise. Those, typically in the landscape, they're fairly flat and you have a lot of wetland complexes. So that's just the nature of the landscape.
So the
Thank
other
you, that's
point
very
I want-
helpful. Just one more, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Manager Lewis.
Thanks, Mike. That's helpful perspective. Did you say that this could possibly be used to get more grants or more help from the state with other things other than grants, funding outside of grants?
Well, I think both. I mean, from Mr. President, managers, so on the grant side, we've been leading every organization in the state for the last 10 years in terms of grant requests. And it's because of the need, it's because of the science and, that we bring the solid data. That's the feedback we've gotten from the state, is that we bring information both in terms of the actual diagnostic monitoring. It's just we're not relying entirely on a computer model. We're bringing the data, and then we're also doing the post-construction effectiveness monitoring to verify that the work that we're doing is in fact getting us the results. And we can see that across the board in terms of all the increased water quality data that we're seeing around the district on the lakes that we're monitoring. So, but I do feel that we can make the case, going forward, especially when we start working in the H&H modeling piece of making more requests for both grants and direct funding from the legislature because of the scale of the water resource issues that we're really talking about. Just the Sunrise alone, it's a request that I have at the staff level to start looking at what the percentage of land area is. But one that we haven't even looked at is the historical. How much of Forest Lake was probably wetland at one point and has been filled in, and no longer has the capacity to provide those filters, lungs, if you will, from a water resource standpoint, and is doing just the opposite. Now it's shedding more water and flooding people. I mean, we've had a lot of complaints this year about high water levels around the district. So And it's certainly a combination, so I think that we would have the basis for going down and to the Capitol and making a direct request for funding as well.
Any other questions for Mike? I just wanted to make one point. Last night we had the pontoon tour and we had a number of city people there and one of the persons there was actually running for mayor. And I spent about 45 minutes with this person after the meeting and heads sharing how he feels about the fact that the watershed district should be changing in terms of how we run our operation, how we work with the city, et cetera, et cetera. Basically relaxing our standards and so forth, so they could get more development, et cetera. And to the point where actually, one of the big issues we all know is where the city's not enforcing their tree program to not cut trees down along the shoreline. So I had suggested to him that perhaps they should, if they're not gonna enforce it, maybe they should turn it over to the watershed district, because we're trying to maintain and build shorelines and natural shorelines. And his comment was, well, at least I would never allow that to happen, because for one thing, you guys would be too tough on people. And secondly, you are not elected officials, you're appointed officials, and therefore you don't really represent the people. And so you're not pro watershed with those kinds of comments. And so this particular person also was the one that was leading the effort on our Aqua program, you know, where we got trouble with the restaurant, buying the restaurant. So I'm just thinking that right now, we don't really need a 24% increase to get by this year. But if we did put a 24% increase in and someone like that gets elected, that has a different perspective of what we should be doing as a watershed district, it would cause us a lot of effort to defend our position. So I just wanted to share that. And I think I sent each of you a note on this also as a summary of that conversation, which was, I think, quite interesting. But so that's another point. I think we need to be a little conservative this year. So that was the last point I had to make. So I'll open it up to any other questions and then maybe we can look at a motion or.
Can we go to the next slide? The 2004 and 2025 tax impact progression graph.
This one?
No. It's oh, wait a second. Yeah,
That's so.
This one is the 24 tax impact progression graph. And
Yeah.
so is this one.
Yeah,
This
there's-
is all
That's
the
a
other
comparative.
watershed districts.
yeah, okay, keep going though. There's one that pulls it all together right below this chart that you just showed. There, that one.
This is everyone's, or not everyone's, this is the estimated tax impacts.
Okay, well, this is 2025 estimated tax impacts. That's what I'm talking about right here. And this one is a more abbreviated one, that doesn't have all that breakdown. It's just got columns for the two counties. Keep going. I pulled it up on my screen here, I guess.
I must.
You can't
be
find it?
Different.
Really colorful.
Really colorful.
Yeah, well, all these different scenarios, it's right after the different scenarios, scenario 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's the one that you just showed. 2024 and 2025 tax impact progression graph.
Is that the one you're looking for?
Slide 16.
This one, Manager Anderson?
No,
Keep going.
No.
like a couple after that.
That's colorful. This one here?
That's the one, that's.
This is colorful.
That's the one.
Rainbows.
Yep.
I think I'm in the wrong presentation right now.
Yeah. And this is I guess Washington's not on there. This is one provided by Chisago County.
Yeah.
Have that
Good.
one.
Yeah, Washington was the one with the graph.
Give Emily's email with it. Or I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, and we can go back to that one with while you're looking at that, we can go back to that one with the spike graph. And just focus on the top part. That one right, yeah.
Slide
that one.
17 there, yeah.
16,
I
The one
don't
that-
think that's the right one.
that's the right one. That's the right one
Oh,
for
that's
now.
the right one?
while you look for the other one.
Well, she did, it's slide 17, just go down. One more. Right there.
That's
One
it.
down.
Yeah, now you got it. Can you enlarge it?
Oh, and then, hold on, I have to
That's
share it
good.
with everyone else.
Mhm.
Make sure they can see it. Thank you for your patience.
Now, if I understand correctly, this is provided by the counties.
There you go.
So the data should be accurate. And it's showing the change by levy amount on the left. And then it shows the home values, you know, going across the right-hand side. And the, I thought I saw one that was comparing 2004 and 5, that might be a different chart. But you're showing, the point of this is what we were talking about at the last meeting, is that even with a 24% increase, you're looking at a pretty nominal amount difference. I mean, yes, it's very rarely over that $100 mark. It's less than that. So you can just see that even that the most expensive home was $750,000. It goes from 347 to 401, below $100, 365 to 421, below $100 a year difference. The same thing going, you know, just down the pike, when you get to the 12% and the 24%. Now you're getting into the higher amounts, but still not huge on an annual basis. And if you divide, you know, that by 12 on a monthly basis, it's a pretty nominal amount of money difference. But this is looked at, of course, on the biannual payments of your taxes, and so it's still going to be a pretty nominal difference on that split payment concept that people look at, I think, more readily.
Well, if you look at the $450,000 home in the center, that's probably say an average home. And you look at 5% increase is $249 and a 24% increase is $294. That's roughly $50 difference. That's not gonna break anybody's budget, I agree. But when I look at a statement, I look at what the percent increase is versus what the percent increase in my other taxes are, my property value, home market value has gone up. And when signed, this would be actually a 20% increase. So if, you know, a 20% increase is not normal, it's way above inflation. My thought is, well, these people aren't controlling their operation. A 20% increase, no matter, you know, if they got a budget, it's 20% is 20%, when somebody else is at 6% or 8%. So it's not only the dollar amount, I think it's also the percentage increase that people look at. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out again. That's what I look at, and as far as measuring how well they're controlling their operation.
But we did one of these 20%ers, 23% about 5 years ago. That was our last one. And so the value of it is that you're keeping that number constant for 5 years. It's not going up a penny. So by the end of that 5-year period, it's going to be a smaller amount on the value of that home aggregation after 5 years. So, you know, you can look at it, you know, a lot of different ways, but the point is that when you look even at the highest value property, it's under $100 increase. And so the value, again, is that we are coming into the period where we have to start paying back in large numbers, the loans, the multiple loans that we took. And we did that purposefully. So now we're in the payback period, and it's not $75 or $150,000 a month. We've got 3 that we need to pay for. Maybe 4 starting, but certainly 3, and it's $500,000 a year. Do we want to keep that $500,000 working for current and future projects? Or do we want to have that go to debt service and rely on grants that are getting harder to find? Now, there's other avenues that we can look at. And I agree with Mike, it doesn't hurt to try something different. Going to the legislature has worked for other watersheds. And that might be a way to do it. I think the combined approach, I'm convinced of this, under the climate resiliency umbrella, the Greenway corridor, the flooding that we're talking about right now, the protection or restoration of wetlands is critical to the future. We can keep working on those things, and the grants are not meant to be replacing our local contributions. So on an overall scale, I still believe that this is not asking a lot of our citizens to reach the goal of clean water.
Well, again, we underspend our budget each year and we're saving money this year already more than to cover our reserve loss. So we'll come out fine next year, I think. And then, and our floodplain program is still just getting
Well, your
developed.
sub watershed's already been taken care of. But you've got the Comfort Lake and the Little Comfort Lake one that we're just starting on.
And we've got, well, I don't say that because everything we've done in the whole watershed has benefited Little Comfort. and Comfort
Yeah,
Lake.
but that's assuming every drop of water reaches Comfort Lake, and it doesn't.
It's, your
Yeah.
water quality has gone up tremendously. So, I mean, already because of those impacts.
Well, that's because we did some projects early. The Bixby Park project, the Highway 61
Right.
project, and that was the biggest thing, because what we're doing is we're holding back water that's coming at us from,
Okay, so what the same argument, and we're not, we don't need to take this 24% right now. I think we can wait another year and see how things turn out and decide. Also, we took our last large increase when we were getting a lot of projects, big capital projects. So.
you don't think we're gonna have those?
We will, but I think we've got loans right now to cover part of that, so I think, plus the fact you don't wanna have to get into a battle with the 3% people that are out there. Consuming all of our time and effort, for an extra $90,000 that we're gonna spend on 3 little projects. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's my perception. I'm not gonna have to stand up and defend it if we pass it, so, 'cause I'm voting
President
against it.
Smalls,
Yes, go ahead.
I did a little bit of research on, I was interested in finding out how much of my property taxes is going to the watershed district in comparison to other watersheds, what they're paying to the watershed district. And so with the help of Mike, I was able to figure out market values of properties from 500,000 to 1.5 million, which typically can be the cost of property value of the lakeshore homes around many of our lakes. And consistently in Big Marine, it's 4%. 4% of their property taxes, no matter what the value of their property was, 4% was going to the watershed district. In Lake Elmo Valley Branch, it's 3%. I'm paying to the watershed district 5.7% of my property taxes. And I know Schmaltz Loft is paying 4.7. And as I look down at my chart here, Anderson is paying 4% and Taves is paying 5.2%. So I think that's what people are going to look at. And when I look at the amount I'm paying to the watershed district, I'm thinking that's enough. And that is money that needs to be managed in the budget by the Board of Managers and work within their budget. This is a time when people are working with tight home budgets, trying to pay their bills, and I just cannot see us increasing it above 5%. I think 5% is generous. And that's my opinion at this point. After doing some considerable thought about this, because at our last board meeting, we were going to take some action and I asked for some time and I did give it a lot of thought. And so I just wanted to share that as my opinion. I'd be interested to hear from the other managers as well.
Yeah, I think so. Also, I think Mike got a letter from Randy Schumacher, who's a financial person. What did he saw I proposed that? What did he say, Mike?
He just had communicated to me as a CAC member and
Right.
a resident that he thought that was excessive. That it would be, but while he supports the work of the district, he just felt that it would potentially cause more.
I think he used the word suicide.
Well, political suicide, yes, but, I was trying to find a softer term there, but he was, that we would be spending a lot more time defending it than we would be actually working on projects. This is summation of his elements.
So I think Manager Baki's comment is good. We've had a lot of data again. So any of the other managers want to make some comments, and then maybe somebody can make a motion. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, then, does somebody want to make a motion?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Manager.
What did Randy say about the 23% increase that occurred 5 years ago? There wasn't much of an uproar about that. But maybe it was because his lake was being handled during that period. Maybe that's the difference.
I don't think Comfort Lake's gonna starve. We'll make sure that they get taken care of. So, let me tell you, and I'm sure you'll take care of that better than I will even. So I think we're gonna do fine with Comfort Lake. We got all these programs coming down, all the new big grants we got for Comfort Lakes, which is fine. But back then, again, we had an aggressive capital program going on too, and we knew we had to do it, so we were coming off of analysis and that kind of stuff, and we needed that extra money, but I think today, the political climate is a lot different than it was back then.
These are
We
still
weren't on the
capital
radar of the 3% out there,
Yeah.
and once you get on that radar, I've been on a lot of city council meetings. And I don't wanna be in that position when the 3% come after you. So,
There's still capital projects that are coming, so it's not like capital projects are dead. They are not going to be the same capital projects that we've had in the past. That's the point.
Okay. So, Mike?
Mr. President, managers, I just wanted to, just a couple things. I'll support whatever the board collectively agrees upon, so, and we'll look to implement it. We can go to, there's one tab in the budget that shows the history. So the district has gone anywhere from like a 2014 and 2023, we had a 0% increase, but in 2017, it was 24%, in 2018, it was 20%. To the point that Manager was talking about, trying to get ready for these capital projects. And then we've averaged from then, anything from 5 to 8%. So collectively, over the last 10 years, we've averaged a 9% increase. So
yeah, inflation is running at 2% right now, 2.5%. So as somebody mentioned, people are struggling to meet their bills, and so it's a big issue with this election also. So people are concerned about percentages, and so, but I think we need a motion. So let's see where we stand as a board. We can talk about this all night. We should vote and see where we stand, I think. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we set the levy at 5%, which is what we proposed earlier.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Is there a second to that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Council Holtman.
First, just to clarify, I think the formal resolution to adopt a levy will come before you at your September 13th meeting. And ordinarily, you would formally also adopt your budget in that resolution. There's nothing that keeps you from adopting the budget tonight, but another route would simply be to have a motion to reflect a consensus that the staff will bring back on the 13th for formal adoption.
Then if somebody gets sick or doesn't show up and we don't have a quorum, it has to be sent in the next day. So, and then we won't have any money to spend. So I'm anxious, well, maybe that's not correct. Maybe you can explain the situation better than I can.
well, I think Mr. Holtman can as well, but no, we would just revert back. I think he has guided me in the past to last year's levy. If we didn't get one in, but also Mr. Holtman, we do have the draft resolution. It could today's date on it and put the numbers in it, if the board was so inclined. You know, at this particular moment as well, so, or perhaps, Mr. Holtman, could the board give direction to set the levy and budget? And then upon advice of council, direct the administrator to have the secretary sign it. Is that an option? Right, it's supposed you have to go through the vote, right? It's supposed to be cleaner to have the resolution up and presented, you know.
Well, I believe, ordinarily, Mike, the resolution is provided to the auditor along with the certification. Is that true, or?
Yes, it is, yes. Mhm.
So it would be best for the board to have the resolution in front of it, if you have the draft. And the board can adopt that resolution and specify any changes or what the numbers are to go into that. Then you can certainly make the revisions and prepare the clean resolution after the fact.
Can we type that in, Mike?
Yes, Tori, if you go under 1,000 admin, 1,001 board admin, or I'll try to send you the link here.
I mean, what after that?
I should have had both of them prepared ahead of time. I guess got wrapped up in a lot of other stuff as usual, so.
See if that,
So that, and Emily's gone on vacation, so.
resolutions, and then 2024. And then there's the 24-08-01. 2025 budget and levy draft. That we would need to. All right, you have to change the. Yeah, okay, the top would need to be right, 24-08. Not.
Oh, wait, T2? Do I do today's date?
Nope, it's just 01.
Oh, zero.
So it's the first resolution for the month of,
We already had one this month.
oh, okay, then it's 02.
I could be wrong.
Let me just quick check.
Mike, is it the same form as last year, except the numbers will change?
Correct. You're right. We did have a 01.
Okay.
For the, well, yeah. So.
President Schmaltz,
Yes, Manager Lowe.
can I ask a question while they're pulling that up?
Sure, absolutely.
You had made a clarification about, and I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying. You know, we're talking about going from a 5% increase to a 24% increase. And you're suggesting that a middle ground, the additional revenue generated from a compromise would not be enough to warrant the potential downside that increase would potentially raise? Is that what you had mentioned, or did I misunderstand?
Yeah, I think this 24% is too visible, I just think, in this state, situation, and what we're finding politically, it's turning out there in terms of people being more vigilant on what we're doing. We're just more vulnerable than we were before, and I just don't think we want to get into that kind of a battle, when it's gonna be hard to justify what we're doing. I respect without.
But I'm talking about something between the 5 and 24.
Yeah, well, you saw what the increases have been. The highest we had last year was 10.7%. I guess nobody got hung on that, but, I don't know. I don't work in that watershed district. The average was, 5.1. We don't really need the money. That's the question right now, you know, you're talking about another. If you cover the reserve, another $45,000. If it's 12% rather than 24. I mean, we planned out here all these years and we haven't had any issues yet. I'm not just saying that we're not gonna have one, but you know, as I said before, if we run short for some reason. We could always take out a smaller loan if we have to, but I'm pretty sure without having 2 employees we're paying for right now, that we're gonna build up the reserve before the end of the year to cover what we're gonna be taking out. To balance the budget for 2025. And then again, we'll probably be under in 2025, like we normally are. But things can change. We got this finished yet, or?
Yes, I just, so there's the numbers, that's the budget and levy based off of the 5% increase.
Okay.
Can you just read those totals out loud?
Sure. So it would be therefore be resolved that a 2025 budget of $3,050,496 is adopted and to be funded by carryover reserves, loans, grants and interest of $1,244,654 and a watershed wide ad valorem levy of $1,805,843.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a, Manager Baca, you want to repeat that or just say you agree with that resolution? So,
Yes, I agree with that resolution to my motion.
okay, thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Additional discussion or comments? Okay, hearing none, then we'll do a roll call.
Right, Manager Lowe,
No.
Manager Anderson,
No,
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, the motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Those votes are painful, but we'll survive. So let's move on. We got some other stuff to finish up tonight. Administrative report. Mike, anything?
President managers. You know, we're gonna start our work with the cultivate advisors coming up at the board. I was thinking that I could just, for the board's benefit, if there's interest, I went out and looked at a few different strategic plans, you know, and they vary anywhere from, you know, 1 page for the school district and 4 pages or so for the Wild Rivers Conservancy, which is formerly the St. Clair River Association. You know, but we'll start with, and then we have a special meeting set for
October 2nd.
Wednesday, October 2nd, correct, with them.
Could we send those out to the board just to look at? I was gonna try to find some myself, but since you did the legwork, it'd be nice to share.
Sure, there's a variety of them out there that we could send from different entities. So staff has continued to do the field work and monitoring, and as you noted, they're picking up some extra tasks and really thankful for the 2 seasonal employees we have in terms of their work as well. Staff did complete the 2 applications, as I noted earlier, for the Clean Water Fund. So yesterday, so those were submitted, and we'll look forward to you know, hearing what the results of those are in December. Managers are, again, so if you're interested in attending the statewide conference in early December, coordinate with Tori. I think a couple managers have already made reservations. And then district is looking to submit nominations for awards for that meeting. And then also probably one or two proposals for, abstracts for speaking at the meeting as well.
Any questions for the administrator?
President
Okay,
Schmaltz.
Yes, go ahead, Manager Baki. I mean,
Yeah, I
Manager.
did a little research on the strategic planning, and as Manager Anderson suggested, the Minnesota Watersheds does have a 10-year strategic plan. And what they have done is create a 6-month strategic plan that is aligned with the 10-year plan. And so the 6-month strategic plan is more focused on implementation and action. And so that's something for us to consider as well.
Okay, thank you, Manager Baki. Another good model to look at. Okay, any other questions? Now let's move on to EOR. Greg, or is it Ann? Okay,
Dr. Wilkinson, yes.
Yeah.
Since I think are both here. Still live here.
Managers.
Yep.
In addition to the discussion that we've already had about the H&H modeling efforts and the grant assistance, as Emily and Mike have talked about, we have an additional update about feasibility work is continuing to continue for Heath Avenue Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. And that is our update.
all right, thank you, Anna. Any other questions or comments for EOR? Okay, if not, then let's move on to Smith Partners. Chuck?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Council Holtman. Moving on then is to report of the treasurer.
Yes, we had for July 2024, $922,620.31 received, 218,727. I'm not going to read the cents, was from Chisago County on July 5th. Washington counties came in about a week later, not quite, but on 7/10, $692,106. Permits were 5,050 and interest was $6,735. And that's from our savings money market account at the bank, of course. Expenses was $182,872.86. Wages, taxes, and benefits made up the majority of that, $59,142. And this is on the electronic side. The vendor checks are $112,262.93. And we have transfers to make this month for coming from the permit escrow into the general fund, $85,900, and from savings to the general fund, $54,100, for a total of $140,000. And I will submit that to the board as a motion to approve the paying the bills and the transfers to the general fund.
I'll second that motion. Tori, do you want to do any discussion or questions for the treasurer? Okay, hearing none, then I'll ask Tori to do the roll call vote.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Schmaltz.
Aye, so the motion carries. Next is report of officers and managers. I have nothing to report. Manager Anderson,
No, I already talked about the Clean Water Council. That was
okay.
it.
Manager Baki,
Yes, I'd like to share with the board managers my fishing experience recently, just as an awareness issue. I had received an email upon return from a trip up north on Monday from President Schmaltz indicating he needed some help with a task. And so I responded saying, sure, I'm available this week. Let me help you out. What can I do? And so what followed was a string of emails that was asking me to pay $800 to a vendor. I did CC Steve, President Schmaltz, and Mike Kinney into this email. And right away, Mr. Kinney informed me that this was a phishing experience. And so I just want you to be aware of that as managers, that we need to watch out for people like that who are trying to get us to scam us into doing something we shouldn't be doing.
Fortunately, we have a treasurer that has quadruple checks and balances, so we're well protected. I hope anyway.
Well, if you want to talk about that,
No,
I can
I've got your,
certainly
I've got your
assure
memo
everyone,
assuring me that we're covered,
yes,
so.
that we're not like Blaine.
Okay, then Manager Taves next,
I have nothing to report, sir.
and Manager Loth.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Aiden and Manager or Administrator Kinney and staff for putting on that boat tour last night. I found it very valuable. I thought the attendance was solid, and I just enjoyed the conversation.
Great, thank you, Manager Loth.
And the party afterwards was really good too.
Sure it was.
Okay, summary and approval of board direction. Council Holman, I think we did too much talking. We don't have any follow-up action, do we, or did we capture some stuff?
A couple items.
Well, Mr.
Couple
Chair, first, I can't resist suggesting that Manager Baki's fishing experience seemed to have encountered an invasive species.
Well done.
That's a good one.
Other than that, no follow-ups except for some remedial humor on my part.
I think Manager Kinney's got a couple.
Well, Mr. President, sorry, Mr. Holtman, I think there was a request to have a review of private ditch versus public ditches.
Right.
You know, and again, it relates really strongly to our planned work and within the district and how many of these private ditches exist.
And Council Holman, you know, well, let's start at 101 ditch too. Lesson,
Yes.
not the 999 version,
Study of the
if you would, please. Thank you.
Because it goes all the way down to as a property.
Oh,
Okay, anything else, Mike? You were gonna follow up with that, with the fellow that visited us too with that ditch, so.
Right,
Okay.
Mr. Mansmith.
Yeah, right, okay. So if any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Apologize for the late thing, we lost a little time, but it was worth it talking to that citizen who came in, so good. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, and I'll second it. And Tori, if you would do the roll call vote, please.
Manager Lowe,
He left already.
no, I see him.
He's there.
I'm not muted.
He's muted. He doesn't want to leave the meeting. He wants to continue.
I.
Manager Anderson,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
I too.
President Schmaltz.
Aye. So motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.
Thank you.